it's the best part of the process for me, for sure. And then, yeah, just executing it, hoping it translates from how you've outlined it, how you've ran the movie in your head to the page.
We've got a couple of comments here from Catherine. She says, "Hi, I listened to the audiobooks by Nick. Love, 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 love your books. I do a lot of traveling and kept very entertained. Just finished the Thomas Prescott series." Michelle
Thanks,
Kelly.
Catherine.
Thanks a lot. Love that.
Michelle Kelly says, "Nick, absolutely love Jungle Up. How is Lassie's future looking?"
So Lassie is a character in my 3 a.m. series. So he'll be back in a couple years, but I'm writing 2 more Thomas Prescott books before I can get back to the 3 a.m. series. But we'll get back to Lassie at some point.
Catherine asks, "Where do you get your ideas for your books?" Asking both authors.
Shall I take that? Or do you want to go?
I'll take this one.
Go for it.
First. So for me, it's primarily stuff that I'm interested in. So there'll be something that I'm either, if I'm reading another book or watching a TV show or reading an article or something in the news that sparks, an interest in me to look further into it. So, for one of my books that had a lot to do with Monsanto and GMOs and big biotech. And so I just threw myself into researching that. I knew I wanted to turn that into a cold case mystery. And then, yeah, just for me, it's something that I come across that sort of, you almost get that audible ping. You're like, there's something here. This is an interesting subject matter. I have to explore this. I wanna create a story with this. So that's my story.
And how do you sorry, I've got a question for you now, Nick, just out of interest. How do you kind of capture those ideas? Are you constantly kind of making notes and stuff like that and making sure they don't slip through your fingers, or?
Yeah, so once I do everything in Google Drive. I don't know how you do things, but so once I get an idea, I'll create a document in Google Drive, outline what I have and throw it in a folder. Yeah, but it usually takes, it's more than just that single idea. Usually it takes like a culmination of 2 or 3 different things that come together, and then you've got yourself a story. So, some of these things you get pinged, 3 years ago, and then you get pinged 2 years ago, and then you get pinged a week ago, and then you have your story. So it's not like one, it's weird. It's different every time, which is cool. Each book is its own triathlon, and you don't really know the rules until you start running.
No, I agree. I definitely have ideas or things that have really appealed to me, and but I haven't quite known what to do with it. I've just kind of thought, that's important. I don't know why yet. And then it might be like as you described it, it's almost like a boomerang. You reach out and you catch it a few years later and go, that's why I needed that, because that's going to work so well over here. So it almost feels like there's something weird going on, that there's, your subconscious is kind of busy potentially while you're wondering what the hell is going on. But I think I'm the same as you, really, in terms of, I can see a few more people in the chat asking, where do the ideas come from? I remember Stephen King being asked that, and he said, I don't know. And if I did, do you think I'd tell you? Which I thought was great. But I think the ideas definitely come from other places. And I think you have to I think of it as keeping the inkwell full. So I like to try and fill the inkwell as often as I can in terms of, and for me, that's usually film. I love film, and particularly TV at the moment. When you're writing in a series, to see how at the moment good script writers are taking a simple, core ideas and a set of characters and expanding those over multiple seasons of very engaging television. I think that's such a gift for us authors, and I kind of see it. that's my hobby anyway. I'm going to be watching films, I'm going to be reading books, I'm going to be doing all these things anyway, but I also have a different lens where I'm looking at it, as an author, and that's, that is sort of homework. And I liken it to I think of them as story engines. So it might be sat in the chassis of a particular car, and that might be the genre. So you might be watching, I don't know, comedy, and that there'll be an entire story engine that's being, contained within that chassis. But I try and come and zoom right out and actually take that entire engine and put it into a different chassis and see if it works. So I'm always kind of making notes about why certain things have worked. So you're hugely entertained. An entire episode of a TV show or a film just really hit all the buttons. I'll just analyze the hell out of that to understand why it worked so well, and then I'll try and come up with a sort of very simple way of remembering that. So that if I'm struggling with a scene, I might kind of think, I wonder if I could do something similar to when, and you could be working on a dramatic scene and remember something from Rick and Morty. I mean, it could be absolutely anything that just sparks you off and you think that really worked well. So I think the answer, there's sort of, that was a long answer to a short question, which is what I think ideas really are absolutely everywhere. And similar to Nick, I capture them anywhere I can and make sure I've always got them to hand.
I remember reading that exact quote from Stephen King.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Well, it's creativity is one of the things that science hasn't figured out. There's something truly magical about creativity, and just, this well that you tap into. And yeah, there, in every single one of my books, there's always been this magical moment that's sort of beyond explanation, that is kind of very cool.
Yeah,
Bigger than you.
You have to sort of trust that feeling, don't you, in terms of there've been a few for me. I mean, on the first book in the series, actually, And Then She Vanished, I got 2/3 of the way through before I actually knew the ending on that one. And when I did, it was like a lightning bolt. I mean, it nearly knocked me off my feet. It was so strong that I suddenly, I felt like I caught up with whatever my muse or subconscious or whatever you want to call it, whatever that knew, I kind of caught up and went, oh my God, yes, thank you. It felt like that. It was very surreal, very strange. But yeah, I think it's tapping into something bigger than us, maybe.
Yeah, that lightning bolt you felt definitely comes across on the page, because I felt it when I read the ending. It was,
oh, nice, thank you.
It was good. It was
cool.
Awesome.
Well, there's so much love for both of you in the comments. But Sarah Potter asks, who are your favorite authors? Question for both of you.
So the authors that shaped my writing style are probably, too many to count, but the biggest three that I always say are Nelson DeMille, who is he writes detective, a few different series that are character driven, first person narratives, and I just fell in love with, that internal dialogue and sort of the snarky, sarcastic detective genre. Janet Ivanovich, her Stephanie Plum series, just, she'll make you laugh just to she'll go out of her way to have her character do something silly just to give you some enjoyment. And I've definitely kept that in my repertoire. And then Michael Crichton was big for me, just because, he's pretty much hard sci-fi, but he was accepted as just this mainstream author. And so those were the ones that those were the authors that shaped my style the most. My favorite authors right now, the best book I've read in 5 years was Andy Weir's new novel, Project Hail Mary. So it was just absolutely such a fun story to read, and it's going to be such a great movie with Ryan Gosling. So excited for that. And yeah, and then, but I do put the Harry Potter series on a pedestal. Probably my favorite thing of all time. Just the universe that she created is just, absolutely mind blowing. So All right, I'll pass the baton, the virtual baton.
Thank you. So I think from yeah, I mean, you can't really, you have to mention J.K. Rowling, don't you? I mean, I think again from a series perspective, it's just so inspiring to have been able to achieve that, and that's definitely something I've kind of aspired to. I've already mentioned Stephen King. I think without him, I wouldn't be writing at all. So I think a lot of people kind of presume, maybe wrongly, that he's just the horror guy, and I think when you kind of mention, oh, you know, well, you know, he wrote Shawshank Redemption, right? And they kind of go, did he? And you say, yeah, and you know, Stand By Me, you know, did he? And then you keep reeling them off, and people are going to go, oh wow, and The Green Mile as well, really? You know, you sort of get all that kind of thing going on. So yeah, I think Stephen King for me, just always felt that, you know, he was, I don't know, just his style of writing impacted me hugely. I think Hugh Howey, he wrote the Wool series, and he started out as an indie publisher, which is the same as me. You know, he inspired me to basically just publish a book, even though I was really scared, and, you know, really didn't know what I was doing. But he inspired me that it's okay just to get stuff out there, and then one thing sort of leads to another. So I'd have to mention him. John Grisham, I just love John Grisham. Just the way that that guy structures a story is superb. And I think also Jim Butcher. So I like a bit of urban fantasy as well. So the sort of Dresden Files. I think I picked up quite a lot of the kind of the fun kind of. I think one of the things he does very well with the Dresden Files is that he is able to tell an incredibly complex world-building story in first person, and that kind of inspired me to try and tell Joseph Bridgeman's story in first person, even though I knew that was going to be difficult. I really wanted it to feel close and quite personal. I wanted to feel like almost like a diary. So I think it really kind of inspired me on that. And then I think finally I'd have to mention, no, I think I've mentioned everyone. Oh yeah, Andy Weir, because of The Martian. I think when I read The Martian, I was just about to start and then she vanished. And I think that just, again, from a structure perspective, just kind of blew me away that he was able to have fun, actually, to tell a really serious story about Robinson Crusoe on Mars, and yet be able to have so much fun with it. That just inspired me to kind of almost not, you know, yes, I wanted to tell a dramatic story, but I wasn't afraid to have a bit of comedy in there and a bit of fun. And that was very, very inspiring. So yeah, I guess the list goes on, but yeah, probably the top for me would be Stephen King.
And how do you guys balance the great humor with keeping the suspense going and the edge of your seat, you know, thriller? Like, how do you negotiate that balance so well?
So it's actually a struggle for me because I think I'm hilarious. So
you are.
So I end up, you should see the stuff that I have to cut out of these books. You know, it's so it's really important to keep the humor organic. So, you know, the majority of the humor in my books comes from Thomas Prescott and just his reactions to certain events and, you know, certain people. He gets annoyed very easily. And, you know, most of the humor is in his head, his internal dialogue that we all have when we're walking down the street, when we're at Walmart, when we're, you know, going about our daily lives. So, but it's definitely, you know, I put Thomas in these situations, and then we have the same. I'm not Thomas Prescott because he's tough, and I'm definitely more of a weenie, but we have the same sense of humor, the same sensibilities, and the same internal dialogue. So, like, I'm putting Thomas in the jungle, which is so scary for me, thinking about being in a jungle and having him react. And yeah, you just have to make, if you look at my first book, which I wrote when I was 22, the ratio of humor to story is probably a little out of whack. It probably leans too far towards humor. Like I'm going out of my way. It's less organic. And as I've matured as a writer, I've really been more careful and more cognizant of just making sure the humor doesn't take the reader out of the story. I mean, I'm still going to have silly situations and have tons of silly stuff, but I want it to keep the story moving forward, as opposed to like Family Guy, like throwaway snippet that has nothing to do with like the main show, which I've done before. So, but you know, long-winded answer. I love when people love my stories, but when I get comments that I've made people laugh, like, you know, some lady, I'm listening to your book on my train and I'm laughing out loud and people are staring at me like I'm crazy, that just like fills me with like hot cocoa belly. It's like, it's the best. It's the best part.
And how about you, Nick Jones? How do you balance the humor and the action and plot?
Sounds really similar. I think it's the situations that you know, the situations you put characters into, how they respond can, you know, that's where the comedy is going to come from, really. So I think for me, you know, I started out when I was writing time travel. It's really great to imagine time travel and just sort of think, wow, wouldn't it be cool to like go back to 1960s London and go to Carnaby Street and see all this really cool stuff. But it would be horrendous. It would be so scary, and I'd be absolutely petrified about changing anything and doing all these sort of things. So for me, I kind of think I just wanted to be honest about that, and I think if you're honest, it is funny because it's quite disarming. And I think for me, you know, Joseph as a character, he is not heroic. You know, he spends the most of the first book, you know, petrified about what he might do, and but that I think the comedy kind of comes from, yeah, it's honesty in situations. I don't try and find it, and in fact, I think the comedy should sort of land because of it's the reactions to what's happening to them, if they're that kind of character. But like Nick was saying, you know, life is such a tapestry of emotions, isn't it? You know, you've got kind of, I want books to be a dramatic sort of emotional landscape, and comedy is part of that. I think that because that's part of life, you know, if at some point in your life you're not laughing, there's definitely something wrong. You're also going to be crying, you're also going to be heartbroken, you're also going to be ecstatic. I try and pack all that into fiction, and comedy is just a part of that because that's how I live my life. You know, I try and you shouldn't try to have a laugh, you're just going to have it. So to me, that I don't want to write books that don't have a bit of fun in them. So that's definitely part of my DNA, I think, as a writer, is to want to. I love hearing that I made people laugh, like exactly like Nick said. You know, if someone says, "Oh, I almost spat out my tea when I was reading that book," but I also like they say, and then at the end, I was in tears, and I think, well, tick, you know, job done as an author. Then I've given you an experience, you know, an emotional experience. So for me, that's important.
Great. We have another audience question. So PJ Jones asks, did you find the lockdown time this past year to be productive for you, or were you too concerned, stressed to be writing?
It was brutal. Like, you would think the lockdown would have been a writer's dream. And, you know, in so many ways, so lucky because financially, you know, I wasn't impacted very hard financially. You know, I work from home already. So in some ways, being a writer is very pandemic proof. I don't know if that's a good term, but I really struggled with writing, mostly because my office would be a Starbucks or a Whole Foods where I could get out of the house, go write for 3 hours, you know, write my, you know, 8 to 10 pages and then come home. Being, you know, quarantined, not being able to get out of the house, I just found it really hard to get motivated to get anything done. And yeah, so for me, I struggled for sure.
Yeah, similar for me as well. I think you know, I'd already been working at home for quite a few years anyway. So I felt like I had a head start on a lot of my friends who were kind of like, oh my God, I'm still in my pajamas, it's 2 o'clock. And I'm like, me too, just get used to it, it's fine. You know, so I think I was kind of used to that already, I suppose. But what was happening in the world was obviously, weighing heavy on everyone. So, I had that kind of emotional, I suppose, stress. But there was, we are lucky, I think, as writers, people who can actually work from home. So for me, the sort of solitude and just cracking on with a day job was something I was doing anyway. And I had a hell of a lot to do that I'd already planned out. So I just kind of hit it really and just got on with it. There were no distractions. In some ways, whilst there's no silver linings when it comes to the pandemic, it was like in some ways that was a good thing. I could just get my head down, get on with it. There were literally no excuses. It was just like, well, I might as well do some writing. So, it was very, very productive for me. But I think I'm really feeling it now. For so long, I'm like, oh, I'm okay. I can just crack on with work and I don't need to do much really. I can just stay at home and just write. I'm happy. But I think as time goes along, you realize actually I really miss friends. I really miss people. And it's the stuff that you do outside of the day job that's so important. All that socializing stuff that we do. I've got it I've put that in a new light really, and just made sure that as we come out of the pandemic that, I'm going to make sure I prioritize some of that stuff. And I think like all of us just value that a bit more. But no, it was actually very productive for me. So yeah, some good writing done.
So I'm very introverted. I'm a homebody. I mean, you would think I was in quarantine before the pandemic, the way that I live my life. So, but I like that energy. I like being around that energy, but sort of invisible. And that's when I like to write. I like to write in a coffee shop that's busy with all these ambient noises and conversations going around me. I love that energy. Not necessarily a part of it, but yeah, that's when I just do my best writing. So, the only person that touched me in the last 15 months was my chiropractor. So it's been a very sad 15 months. But yeah, things are starting, you can sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel. And where I live in South Lake Tahoe, I mean, Memorial Day weekend was crazy here. Tons of tourists, lots of energy. So where Nick was got a lot of stuff done. Now I'm playing catch up.
We've got a lot of questions here. Here's another one. What are the main differences between writing a standalone book versus writing a series? Kay Renfrew asks, and that's for both Nicks.
Go ahead, Jonesy.
Okay. Yeah, I think massively different, because I think when you're writing the first book, it feels like a standalone. So that's the same. But I think once you know, I mean, I knew pretty much after I'd written, I always sort of write the prologue to a book and see whether I like it, see whether it's going to work for me, whether I want to carry on with that character. So I'd written the prologue, and I thought, yeah, this is going to be a series. This is a character who is only going to get so far in book one and has got so much further to go. But you have to obviously also deliver a really good self-contained story that if that's all anybody read, if they only read the first book and said, yeah, I loved it, but I'm not into series for whatever reason, you'd want that to be satisfying and a good standalone novel. But I knew that I wanted it to be a series. So I think writing a series is a bit like time travel. You have to exist in the present, the past, and the future, because I'm always looking back at what I've done. I'm thinking about what the character's doing in this particular book, but I'm also now looking ahead. The series that I have planned out is 7 books, because Harry Potter, but not just because Harry Potter, but the series is, but mostly Harry Potter. Yeah, but that I've decided that I don't want to flesh it out too much. I don't want to kind of pad the series out. I've got enough story to really pack into 7 books. So I want it to be 7 books. And from my perspective, I'm just finished book 3. I'm currently writing in the planning phase of book 4. I'm also planning books 5, 6, and 7 partially at the same time, because that's a lot to do with pacing. So it just makes it really complicated. And honestly, there's not a lot of help out there in terms of, there's loads of books on how to write, but not that many about a series. So I, I'm having to do a lot of study at the same time. So I think it is massively different. You know, if you set out to write a standalone novel, that almost feels like a treat at the moment. The idea of just writing one, but I'm not complaining at all. But it's just more complicated. There's just a lot more balls to keep up in the air while you're juggling.
Yeah, I concur. I mean, a standalone is self-contained, so there's nothing to compare it to. You're not comparing book 1 to book 4, book 2 to book 5. So for me, I've been writing the Thomas Prescott series for 18 years. So I came up with the character my senior year in college, 18 years ago. And so in that first book, he's 32 years old. And now in Jungle Up, he's 37 years old. So he's only aged 5 years. Whereas I've gone from a kid to a slightly older kid, but I've matured profoundly over 18 years. So the biggest struggle with the series is continuity. You have to make sure that your characters are seamless throughout. So, Thomas does mature over the course of 5 years, but you want to make sure it's not the leaps and bounds that I've matured over 18 years. So even with Jungle Up, I had to go back in and make him more of a prick and more sarcastic and more, more in line with who he is in the first 4 books, who isn't necessarily how I'd react to situations now as a 40-year-old with 2 old dogs. And just, the continuity of the story, where the book I'm working right now is book 6 in the series, but it's actually going to be the origin story of Thomas Prescott. So making sure everything in this book that I'm writing right now jives with everything later on in the series, as well as when I wrote Jungle Up, I have to make sure that everything that Thomas Prescott's experienced in the 1,500 pages that I've already written with him translates into who he is in book 5. And so when you step away from that, because there's been times when I write another series where I've taken 3 years away from Thomas Prescott. And then when you get back into it, I've had to read my books. There's nothing worse than rereading your books as homework. Like, oh, I remember this. I got to remember this. He did this. He did this. So, I mean, sometimes it's fun because when you're so far removed from it, it's like someone else wrote it. And you can cringe at some of the writing, and then you can, hip hip hooray at some of the writing, and you make yourself laugh. But I'd say a series is much harder just for the continuity aspect. And like he said, he's working on book 4, but you always have to have future books. You have to have that file open in your brain. And yep.
Great. Well, one more audience question from Cheryl Folk. When did you know you wanted to be a writer? Was there a defining moment? And this is for both of you.
For me, it was actually really quite late on. I basically, there was a brilliant thing that Tony Robbins said. He talked about, if you want to know what you're supposed to be doing with your life, what were you doing when you were age 7? And I was definitely, I was playing with my action figures, and I was making up stories. Entire character arcs, these things would go on all day. I was just quite happy if I was just playing with my toys, making up stories. So I guess the clues were always there. Then I got into sort of drama and acting, and I wanted to be a playwright, and then that didn't quite stick. And then I thought, actually, I kind of think I want to be like a famous rock star or something. So I got into bands, and I was writing lyrics, and I was always searching in what I think of as kind of shadow careers. So they were kind of almost there. They were kind of similar, but not quite right. and then I thought, okay, well, I love film, so I'm going to write a film script. So I began writing a film script, and then as I began to fill in the prose in between the dialogue, I said, oh, looks like it's a book then. So it kind of started to expand into actually being a novel. So it kind of crept up on me. I don't think there was a moment where I thought, I want to do this. There were plenty of moments where I thought, I can't do this. And there were plenty of moments where I thought, I'm terrible at this, but it never kind of quite smacked me in the mouth until I wrote the first chapter of And Then She Vanished. I think as soon as I found Joseph Bridgeman and I wrote the first chapter of that book, and I had so much fun just writing that I thought, okay, fun. Yeah, I could probably, if I'm having fun, then I'm probably doing the right job. So that's when it hit me. So it's actually in terms of my life, pretty late on to realize that that's what I wanted to be doing. I wish I could time travel back and smack myself in the face and say, for God's sake, write books, you idiot.
For me, I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was like 12 years old. I was convinced that I was going to be in the NBA because basketball was my life. And then I started high school, I was 4'11", and then I didn't get that 2-foot growth spurt. So I had to sort of throw my dreams of being the next great NBA star away. And my life had always revolved around sports and reading. And so I just remember reading Matilda and just loving it and then rereading it. So I was already reading books differently when I was really young. Almost, they call it actively reading. Like, why do I want to turn the page? Why does the author have me so sucked in that like I can't go to bed? I have to read for 4 hours straight and not go to the bathroom. And so it was just always one of those things. I was going to be a writer, which is risky because in a lot of regards, it's so cool because, you know, you're in college and you're with friends that don't know what they want to do. And they're just sort of up in the air with, you know, trying to find or let their vocation, let their passion find them. Whereas my passion found me when I was, you know, 12, 13 years old, but all your eggs are in one basket. I mean, it was become the next great novelist or die trying. So, yeah, for me, it was just, it always was. It's hard to explain in creativity because, you know, it finds you. So, you know, it was hunting down Jonesy for a while and then it tackled him.
Yeah, big time. I think for me, it was like, it felt like there were so many, it was very strange. There were so many messages that felt like the universe was saying, well, if you're not going to do it now, when is it actually going to be? Because we are nudging you, you know, left, right, and center. You know, we've turned all of these cogs in your life. It's now or never kind of thing. So, yeah, it was definitely a calling, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
And you got to do it, even if you just have to give it a go.
Well, we're almost at time, but we have a final question to ask you both. Nick Jones, can you give us a teaser of what's next for Joseph Bridgeman? And Nick Pirog, can you give us any hints about what's on the horizon for Thomas Prescott and his next adventure? Start with you, Nick Jones.
Okay, sure. So obviously we've got book 2 has just been released. So that's got Joe heading back to 1960s London, as you described, to sort of face up against some gangsters. It's a pretty cool adventure. Vinny, his vinyl loving sidekick, kind of heads off to the 60s with him. So it's a fun book. It's lots of action, lots of adventure, pretty heartfelt stuff. Like the first. If you like the first book, the second book's definitely going to be your bag. And then book 3 is coming out January, and book 3 sends Joe not only into the future but also back to Paris in 1873 to a opera house fire. So the stakes are higher. There's a missing time traveler. There's it's a really cool adventure, and he's got a sort of connections with the past and the future. So Joe has really got to step up. So I'm throwing him literally into the fire in book 3.
I'm so excited to read. Like, I'm almost jealous. Writing a time travel series would be so much fun because you literally can go wherever you want. So I'm stoked. I'm super excited.
Don't be jealous. It's absolute hell.
Too many options.
Ah, just trying to keep trying to keep a track on all the paradoxes. And when I get plenty of reviews from people saying it's a good book apart from the paradoxes, and I'm like, you can't write a time travel book without the paradoxes. It's just impossible. All you can do is limit them.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, so I'm writing Thomas Prescott's origin story right now. So it's going to take place about 2 years before the first book in the series. And it's probably one of the best storylines that I've come up with. I don't want to jinx it, but so it takes place in 2011 during the whole Occupy Wall Street thing in Philadelphia. And I won't get into it too much, but I actually can't give anything away. So it's going to be great. It's an origin story. Thomas Prescott is 30 years old, which has been a lot of fun because I have to make him even younger and more immature and more, even more sarcastic and more just spontaneously. Anyhow, it's gonna be good. I'm excited. It should be out. I just talked to my publishing director yesterday, and it should be out September of next year. So I still actually COVID. I thought before COVID, I had set up a trip to go to Philadelphia to research all these different settings and do my due diligence, and then COVID hit. And then I thought maybe I could write the book just without going to visit there. Because it's a great time to be an author with Google Earth. You can walk the streets, you can sort of go to these places virtually, and you can usually get enough where you can put the reader there. But it's dawned on me in the last couple of weeks that I have to go to Philadelphia. So I'm setting up a trip, and it's going to be fun, and I'm going to go visit all these places, and it's going to make the book absolutely pop in next September. So I will give you the title. It's called The Numbers, and it's gonna be great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for this wonderful event. Thank you everybody for tuning in, for your great questions and comments. We hope you'll check out these two amazing new series. The Shadows of London and Jungle Up are available now in print, ebook, and audio wherever books are sold. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks, Nick Pirog and Nick Jones.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone.